Okay, welcome to today's episode. We're privileged to have former NASA astronaut Cady Coleman joining us today. With 2 separate space shuttle missions and 6 months aboard the International Space Station, Cady is a trailblazer in space exploration. She's not only a scientist, but also a musician with a huge graph for Irish traditional music, and even brought her flute to space to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Today, we'll dive into her incredible journey, the challenges of living in orbit, her thoughts on the future of space travel, and why more young people need to be more engaged with science. You won't want to miss this. So, Cady, thanks, and very welcome day to you. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here today. We had over an auditorium there, 200 young people from secondary school join us for a talk from yourself about your experience in space. And your message today is about bringing more young people into science and STEM. Why is this your new mission?
I wouldn't actually say that it's a new mission, but it's one where now that I'm retired from NASA, I have a little more time to really think about, how is it that I can affect, those numbers. When you look at the news today, when you just, understand, it's actually amazing, I think, and wonderful that people are more aware of our challenges today. But we need them also to be ready for those challenges. And it can be daunting. And I think that knowledge is what actually, arms us and makes us ready to face hard questions we are not going to know the answers to. And realize that as a team of many, we will find different perspectives that really help us find our way.
Okay. So tell us a bit about your own journey through science. What attracted you to chemistry? It was your specialist subject. What attracted you to that, and what was your journey through college and education?
I think it starts early on. I mean, mentally, when you ask me that question, there's various teachers that kind of go through my mind. There's many of them. Actually, back when I would think about 9 years old, I had a teacher that said, "Cady, what if you pretend that you're not shy?" And it really, I just thought, wow, maybe I decided that was a good idea. And it really changed my interactions in class. But a high school chemistry teacher that was just so passionate and just determined that everyone understand how important chemistry was and how it affects all of us. And it was that passion, that insistence, where even when I had my doubts whether chemistry was exactly what I wanted to do, I was like, she was so sure. And so I really gave chemistry a chance. Actually, I looked at other things because I think that was a very empowering thing. But it's instructors that either encourage you to look around and find yourself, or they help you understand what, you might be looking for. This is the kid that you pass in the hallway, the one that you say hello to on the walk-in from the car, the one you meet on the bus. And all those times that teachers take that time, I think they make a difference because they make us feel like this place, this education journey is a journey that we're a part of.
Yeah. And your own journey then after that, you went to college. You've experience in the military as well. That's where you give your
Exactly. The military actually financed my education, which for a kid who didn't have that kind of financing really made a difference. And I went to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which was a place I had no plans to go to, because I wanted a well-rounded education. I knew that I liked chemistry, I liked math, and I wanted to learn more about them. But I wanted a life as a person too. I wanted fun and friends and sports. And my mom made me go and look around. And what did I find there at this school that I thought was only technical? I found a life. I found people like me and friends that I now have forever.
Wow, yeah. And then the journey from your college life to become an astronaut, how long did that take and what did you have to go through to become that?
One of the biggest steps there was, wanting to be an astronaut, it's a little bit like when people ask you what you want to do. When you're little, if you say you want to be an astronaut, they're really excited. Or maybe you want to be a firefighter or a police person. All these are actually really noble and great professions. But as you get older, when you say astronaut, they're like, yeah, but what do you really want to do? Something that's possible, right? And for me, getting over that was, or actually what even inspired me that I could think about trying was meeting Sally Ride. And, now with more storytelling and more news, I think we see more photos and hear more stories from all different kinds of people in professions that we think are only for the special people. Mm-hmm. And then you realize that whatever it is inside of you, if there's a direction you want to go, you should go there. And I'm trying to make sure that we see more examples. People can be inspired by what's around them. Because the process, you asked about the process, and it's hard to write down on a piece of paper for a job that you just think nobody gets why they should pick you. But people have to start practicing that now and writing down all the things that they're proud of as if no one is going to read it. Because when they go back and give it a little time and go back and read that list, they're going to realize that if they're having an honest conversation with someone who's considering inviting them to join their veterinary team as an intern or a student, a volunteer, these are things you need to communicate to them. And, it's important to learn how to speak up about who you are. If you don't tell people who you are, they cannot pick you.
Yeah. And you talked about in the auditorium there that a simple thing like running a summer camp for kids, as you say, it's a massive responsibility for people to that. You have to keep them. And you said this was in an application form that stood out to you as well. So some things that may not seem directly relevant to space travel, or whatever, you say that put these in your application form if you're heading that way.
And, even I think about the sort of multitasking that most of us have to do in order to pursue school or a career and have a family. I mean, these are big organizational skills. But I flew with the first woman commander, Eileen Collins, of the space shuttle. And at NASA, they would send us on what they called National Outdoor Leadership School, which was an amazing experience to go and be out in a place, not very hospitable place, and learn to get along with a team you didn't get to choose, which is much like space, right? But Eileen would say, well, Cady, what about indoor leadership? Because I think we end up in balancing all these things, exhibiting a lot of that. And so recognizing the things in your life where they're probably hard and you make them work. Yeah. And realize that those are important to the teams that you're going to be on. And you have to speak up about them because they won't know unless you tell them.
Was there a moment in your life that you decided to become, that you wanted to go towards becoming an astronaut? Was there an actual spark of inspiration that you got?
That spark for me was meeting Sally Ride.
That was it.
I mean, I remember the auditorium. I remember where I was sitting. I remember that I came in almost late. And just seeing her at the front and just being who she was, very relatable to me, not incredibly tall, brown hair, but also passionate about what she was studying and clear that, it counted that she was trying for that kind of excellence in her studies and what she's pursuing. It just made me think, wow, maybe I could try to do that thing I always thought was for somebody else.
Mm. And I hope you've inspired some of our students here today and people listening to this, because I was looking it up and there's less than 600 people have traveled into space over the last 6 decades and in the whole history of humankind. So it's a very, very few privileged that had that view from space. What is it like when you look through that portal from the International Space Station?
The very first time, but I don't. It doesn't actually change for me. There's looking down, straight down, and seeing cities and places that mean something to you, but it's hard to look away from the curve of the Earth. That when you look sort of further out that window, off in a distance, you see the curve of the Earth, and it's just really clear that you are in a spaceship orbiting your planet, and that everyone who's alive, except for those of us living on space stations, is down there on Earth. All of them, everybody, the whole family is down there on Earth, except for a few people up in space. And I felt like space wasn't as far away as I thought, and home was just bigger than I thought.
And some of the earlier astronauts from the moon, as you said, you can see the whole Earth. They talked about its outstanding beauty, an oasis in the pitch darkness of space, but also how fragile it is. Is that something you experienced from the space station? Did you see any kind of noticeable changes that were pointed out to you, or something of glaciers and floods? Or
at night you can see the thin atmosphere. There's just you realize how little there is between us and a vast universe, and how protected we are by that atmosphere. And so it's like everyone is inside this precious cocoon, really. But then when you start looking, and actually in the education that we receive as astronauts to understand what we're looking at on the Earth, there are photographs and stories and facts about lakes in Africa that were 20,000 square kilometers, and then photographed every few years by astronauts, and now are 2 square kilometers. And everything that was lake is then dry and dusty, and realizing that dust actually, we can see dust circling the Earth. And when there's a volcano, sunsets are affected for a year, probably. I'm making that number up a little bit, but it's really for a long time. And so the change, we can see changes. I'm proud of being part of, we've gone from taking those kinds of pictures and trying to take pictures of the right place at the right time, to having high definition cameras on the outside of the station photographing literally the Earth all the time. And that data showing, and people figuring out how to compare yesterday's from today's, from last year's, can show us the changes in the amount of water, what the water looks like, what the land looks like, and how the Earth is changing. And I think seeing is believing, or being able to quantify things with data. And because we have this extra data, it arms everyone. I think it helps everyone down here on Earth understand how critical it is that we start thinking of solutions to our challenges right now. And something small may turn out to be actually quite valuable when it comes to an important suggestion.
Yeah. And looking at the fragility of Earth from one portal, to look at the other, or the expansion of the universe, what is the universe, looking out into the dark, into the stars from a space station? What does that look like?
Technically, we're not very much closer to space, but it feels that way. It feels like it's just right there. I mean, when I'm down on Earth, it feels like it's up in the sky, right? Or further out because it's space. And yet when I'm up there, I certainly feel like I'm part of it, that the place I am is a part of space, and that Earth is part of space. And in fact, it makes it feel like Earth itself is a spaceship. And we are the crew. We, meaning all of the billions of people here on Earth, we are the crew of Spaceship Earth. And similar to a space station, we do not choose each other as crew. We might wish each other was different or differently capable, but we are who we have. And we have to find a way to make sure that everyone is empowered with the tools that they need to be valuable members of their communities, their families, and their planet.
Okay. Living together on planet Earth, and as big as it is, can be difficult. I'm sure it's very challenging when you're compacted into a small international space station. How do you get on with your day? You've been out there for 150 plus days, is that right?
Not enough. I would have stayed a long time a longer time if I could have.
What kind of routine do you keep? Do you have to be very disciplined in that kind of environment? How do you get on with people, and how do you fill your day?
Well, there is no question ever of filling the day. And I have to say that we pretty much work sort of 7 to 7, and maybe officially it's shorter, and that includes about an hour and a half of exercise and cleaning up. But so the rest of the day is filled with, there's a schedule where people down on the ground have the bigger picture, and they know this is exactly the right moment to be able to start that experiment so that it can finish at this time. And so we don't usually, unless it doesn't make any sense to us, we don't usually mess with the schedule, and we do what's on the schedule. And because we're the operators, we are carrying out a bigger plan, but it is tremendously busy. And I feel like, but your question was, I think, mostly about, I've just described why it's actually more challenging, and we're never bored, and there's never enough time to do anything.
Yeah.
So under those kinds of stressors, how do we get along with people that we did not necessarily choose and who we might wish were different or acted different or felt differently about us, right? And the answer is a little unfair in that it's not really fair, but it's actually easier up there than it ever is down here on the ground, because the mission is so clear when we're up there. It's clear that every data point that you take on an experiment is going to move us closer to understanding more about, the hardware, like, the toilet, the CO2 removal system, the ventilation, the sensors that tell us whether the air is toxic. I mean, all these things that we learn about, that's hardware, but also science experiments. Every data point that we take gets us closer to a safer life here on Earth, but also armed with what we need to know to explore further, like going back to the moon to live and going to Mars. And so that's a long way to say that I feel extremely purposed, and I think so does everyone else. Like, the mission is just so clear. It's also viscerally clear that it just isn't important that you wish someone was different or that they would behave in a certain way. And we've trained together usually for a year or 2 or 3 by the time we get there, and you already know who people are, and they know who I am, and they know that we all need different kinds of help. And so being up there, we're not surprised by who each other is. And at the same time, the mission itself and the imperative nature of the mission is what brings us together and makes teamwork. I won't say it's effortless, but it's, we just know we have to make it work, and we just do.
Yeah. And you talked about there, the speed that this station goes around the Earth, and you talked about it's very difficult to actually say, well, we're going to be arriving over Ireland, and you shared photographs of Ireland from the space station. And how long does it take you? Like, if you see somewhere like a small country like Ireland, how long do you see it for while you're flying over it?
Well, we're going, I think, we're going about 5 or 6 miles a minute. No, a second. Yes.
A second. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it happens so quickly, but there's definitely, it's not like it's just over in, I don't know the square footage or the distance for Ireland, but I do know that, it's really, we still get to see it. We get to be there with a country, it doesn't seem actually small to me. Because it's always so good. And I guess because, in a way, if it's where you're from, and my ancestors are from here, you're always drawn to looking up there. And so it's kind of about every minute that you do get as opposed to the ones you don't.
Yeah, it's usually covered in cloud anyway. So
there is the cloudiness thing. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. And do you realize the speed you're going at when you're up there, or is it just completely just you feel nothing? Do you notice that when you look down on Earth? Do you see it, or is you just so far up that you don't actually notice the speed?
I think it's hard for your mind to really realize the speed. I mean, you definitely feel like you're moving. I mean, I don't know. It's the fact that we go around the Earth about every 90 minutes, maybe a few less, right? And so that's 16 times a day. And so what I just remember feeling is that, here you are going around, we're just going in the same orbit the whole time, and the Earth is turning below us. And so I know that if I don't look at something now, I'm going to have to wait until we've gone all the way around again, then I might not be able to see it because it's already turned. And so there's just this inevitable, we have to look. I mean, it's hard to look away from the window because you just want to capture that image.
Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, the photographs and videos that you've shown today they're stunning, and we can only imagine what it could look like with your own eyes from such a beautiful portal.
And just that bigger sort of picture from the cupola window, where we have it's literally 6 windows around the outside and a really huge one on the top, and it gives us a way of. I mean, we feel like we're in a room of windows, and we're up in the very top of it. And then, you see the Earth, and you can see places that you love. You see them approaching, and you can spin around effortless and watching them recede in the distance. And I think it makes you feel it makes me feel very humanly present.
Yeah. And life on the station as well, being weightless is part of it.
Delightful.
It's delightful.
It is. I'm not that graceful down here, and just the touch of a finger, or I have longer hair, so if I take one hair off my head and I stretch it between my two hands, between fingers, and I push on, say, the back of the table, or the edge of the table, that push on a single hair done gently will send me flying across the whole space station until I run into something, bounce off one of the walls. So it takes so little force to move that you realize you don't need your whole hand to you just need a little finger to propel you in just the right direction. I call it tending. You're sort of, launch yourself down the module, and then you're sort of giving yourself a little touch here, a little touch there, so you can, fly down the middle of the hatch into the next module.
Wow, yeah. And do you ever get used to it, or is this something that just every day you wake up, it's like...
I would wake up every morning just immediately just thinking, oh, I am still here. And just be so excited to be... I think the flying reminds you that you're in this magical place. And even if you're grumpy and you wish you were more prepared for the day, or, you have to do something maybe you don't particularly like, there's just still this magic to being there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. It's an incredible experience. And I could keep and ask you... I haven't even started the questions really. It's just been chatting to you. But you have gone on a spacewalk. Have you experienced any of that or any?
I have not, but I am very proud to be somebody who was qualified to go on a spacewalk. Right. And the reason that's so important is that when we started sending people to live on the space station, we only had ships that carried 3 people. And so when you get everybody up there, basically on the U.S., European, Japanese, Canadian side, we're all one big consortium. There's going to be 3 people, and they need to be 2 spacewalkers and a backup.
Okay.
And there's no room. We only have 3 seats on each of the ships at the time on the Soyuz. There's if you're not qualified to spacewalk, you cannot go and live and work on the space station. And couldn't do that till we gained another seat. And part of that is that that made that challenging was that they eliminated the suit that fit many of the women.
Okay.
And I am, both proud and, I would say discontented that situation even existed. Mm-hmm. Proud to have been one of the smaller people to qualify. Mm-hmm. But if I hadn't, I would have waited 11 years to fly on the space station. And I'm still the same, many years later, I'm still the same capable person I was on the original date. And to have waited just because people couldn't see the value. It was more expensive, but it was money that could be found. But as they said, we have all of the spacewalkers. We've looked ahead to the manifest. We have all of the spacewalkers that we need. And every time I think any of us is in front of an audience and we see a sea of hands and we're looking for volunteers, and it's easy for me, I'll be a little nervous as a speaker, to pick the hands that come up first. And almost always those are going to be actually... people who are very confident about asking their questions. Standardly, they're going to be guys, right? Yeah. And every time I don't ask the women or the minorities who haven't raised their hands yet, I'm sending them a message. It almost doesn't matter whether you were here. And these are, and actually, I loved the people that I worked with. And I mean, we have wonderful astronauts, and but I think that we all have a responsibility. No one does this on purpose, and none of us are bad people. It's just, because I myself do this, right? It's just that all of us have to realize that time is running out in terms of solving today's challenges. And in order to do that, we have to look hard for the people that can help us and make sure they are ready. And by doing that, doing that means you notice them. It means you look at them like it matters that you are asking me a question, and I'm going to answer it. Because we have to be on the same team here.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so important, isn't it? The role models as well are seen.
Exactly.
You see it to be it, as We often
I really
heard.
think so. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And how important is that now? We've seen some changes. You were talking about 40% to 60% now, the ratio of male, female astronauts at the moment in training. When you were there, did you see it, like, has there stark change since your time in that short time?
We were about 15% women when I was there. Okay. So it's much lower, right? And as I've said, people are not terrible or mean or on purpose creating a path that leaves people out. It's something that can be this unconscious, sort of bias. And so what I really take joy in is that when it's 40% women, it's just plain old harder to not sort of think hard about how do we make sure that everybody feels included and that their skills are important. Just because there's more of them. You look out in the audience, it's hard to only describe, where one of the restrooms is. If the audience is 40% women, and it's hard to describe maybe why the restrooms are so far away for the women. Some of those things still happen, and actually then things get changed. And again, no one does these things on purpose, and I think they're hard conversations to have. Yeah. And in your environment, in your classroom, you will, in a discussion, you will see somebody that raises their hand that doesn't get seen by the instructor. I guarantee you that instructor is working hard, harder than anybody imagines. They're thinking about the material, they're thinking about the kids. And me, when I get tired and maybe nervous, it's really easy just to do the best you can do. And sometimes that means you haven't actually still been working hard to include everyone. So realize that it's just that maybe somebody observing this can be the person to say, hey, Sanders had her hand up and I wanted to know what she had to say. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be mean so these are hard conversations, and I rejoice in the fact that once you start practicing having them, people are relieved to have them because we all want to know how to do better.
Well, we're glad we had so many vocal young women in the audience today. I think it was a majority today, which is probably rare for some of the talks, but I hope that's an encouraging sign for the future.
I want to say there were more questions from women than men.
Yeah, there was. And
I had I had a great time eating lunch with the faculty.
Yeah.
A lot of chemistry people. And cool chemistry to learn about here at ATU.
Yeah, we've got some very interesting people here.
Absolutely.
But, I'm going to finish up now shortly, but there's a couple of questions I want to ask you, mainly one. And is, what is it like leaving Earth with all that power behind you? Vaulting into the stratosphere, and what's it like coming back down again?
Launching my first mission, we delayed 7 times over 30 days. The first time was something mechanical wasn't working, couldn't go yet, and then it was hurricane season where we didn't get in our spacesuits 7 times, but it was there's people in my family that still have not forgiven me for not taking so long to go. So then when you finally do actually, climb in your spacesuit, get strapped into that space shuttle, and the engine's light, and you go, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Part of it's just like unbelievable. I think I started to think, maybe they were just kidding and this never really happens. And so then when you really do leave the Earth and you have the power of these engines behind you, it's not violent. There's some shaking with the solid rocket boosters. It's clear it is relentless. Like, it is just not going to stop until you get to space. And being part of that was just so exciting. And then arriving, because then the engines shut off and it's like, kabunk, meaning suddenly you go from being push through space, and suddenly you're just floating, and things in the cabin are floating, and your arms are kind of poking, pulling up, and you realize, I'm here. And then I didn't really want to leave. So landing, on the space station, we typically ask the person, one of the people that landed most recently, to talk us through landing. And Scott Kelly goes, Coleman, it's going to be the coolest e-ticket ride you ever take. It's amazing, And because the capsule's designed, it has it feels like pencil eraser on the bottom, but it's called an ablator, meaning it's supposed to burn up. And by definition, that means pieces of flaming spacecraft are going by the window, which is not a good feeling. unless you know that it's actually part of the plan. So he helped us understand. So, I mean, we actually did understand that, but it's a nice thing to review right before landing, right? Yeah. And then when the parachute's open and he looks straight at me, he goes, Coleman, parachute opening shock, it's going to feel like that capsule, even though it's still falling fast. It's going to feel like it's standing still, and you do not want to be talking. Set an alarm. And it's not in a patronizing way. If you're not paying attention, it's so abrupt, you really don't want to be talking because you might just bite down hard.
All right, so it's so violent that stop.
Yep, and then it's swinging and circling, and it's just so much fun. And then a couple of minutes later, we just keep looking at the altimeter and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then it's just this like big, very solid thud, and there we were on the steppes of Kazakhstan, waiting to be picked up by a helicopter that arrived very, very quickly.
Wow. And how do you feel physically yourself when you come out of those capsules?
I did pretty well. I think that when you've gone a couple of times, somehow your body and your mind kind of know, okay, now I'm back in the other place, then the rules are like this. And so I also say the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And I'm sort of a smaller person, and all I can say is I landed like $1 million.
Great. And my final thing, and we're going to finish up now, is the future of space. Where's the most exciting future do you think space has?
The future in space is more people in space, because it's a place where we can really solve a lot of challenges because it's a giant laboratory. You take away gravity, so many things change. We have a lot to learn. And getting more people up there, more people doing experiments, whether it's for a few minutes or for a few hours or for living up in space. We have a lot to learn up there, but we need more people up there. We need it to happen more often. I mean, science cannot happen on this slow, schedule. We need, maximum opportunity to get people and science stuff up into space. So I think that's where the opportunity is. And we learn so much about Earth when we do this, and especially in a biological sense. That's one of the most exciting areas, that things just kind of work differently without gravity. And it doesn't mean we're growing two heads or something weird, but it gives us an opportunity to measure how our systems are doing. And